welcome, dear listeners, to a brand new episode of The Partial Historians.
Ooh.
I am Dr. G.
And I am Dr. Rad. Hello, hello.
Welcome to the history of Rome from the founding of the city.
Yes, and last time it wasn't exactly a fine moment for that journey.
It might have been Rome's lowest moment. It was
down
mad.
there. It's right down there.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah, so the Romans, when we last met Dr. G, were skirmishing around with the Aequians and don't seem to really have come to a strong resolution on that front.
It was a backwards forwards.
Yeah.
Men were lost on both sides.
I mean, like, the city of Rome was safe and all, but...
Kinda,
yeah. Like, the Aequians left, but it was kind of with a whole, like, well, okay, if you're going to be like that...
Yeah, it seemed
just
like
leave, yeah.
mostly a stalemate on all sides. So lots
Kind
of
of think that way.
skirmishes, lots of pitched battles that don't seem to go either way. And basically all of the armies end up just sort of tossing up their hands and going back to wherever they came from.
Well, I kind of feel like the Aequians were justified. Like, not so long ago they were complaining that, we don't do pitched battles, we do raids. And then they kind of did, and they did it really well. So maybe I was a bit harsh on them before, mocking them as I did.
Yeah, they've decided to adapt, and it's all happening. So this means that we're just at the tail end of 464 BCE and about to head into the year 463
So
BCE.
you say, Dr. G.
So I say.
You say.
It's not just me saying that, Broughton agrees with me.
All right, I'll go with Broughton on that. So, I don't know if you remember, Dr. G, but amongst the Aequian mishmash that was happening, Livy did leave the previous year that we were talking about with some portents. It seems that scary things were on the way.
There was fire in the sky?
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think it
I'm just going to
means?
bring that up because I feel like it might have something to do with some stuff that we may or may not be about to talk about. So anyway, just going to say that. All right, so
All
new
right.
consuls. Who have you got?
Suspense.
Yeah.
So I have two new consuls.
Me too.
Surprise, surprise.
Yep.
It's Lucius Aebutius Helva.
No, just stop right there. Sorry. Lucius Aebutius.
Indeed, that is his name.
I think we've got a new candidate for most awesome name. He comes second to Spurious Furious.
I do like Aebutius.
Okay, sorry. So Lucius Aebutius Helva. Yes, that's who I've got as well.
From patrician stock.
Of course.
Son of Titus, grandson of Titus, which gives us a sense that this must be the second or third or even fourth son, because if he was the first son, his name would also be Titus. But it's Lucius.
I love those Roman conventions.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple of things that we can learn from that.
Yeah.
And his co-companion for this year is Publius Servilius PriscusHARK.
Yes, I have the same people, so that's good. We've got the same consuls.
Also a patrician.
Yes. Now, I'm going to launch straight into what I was talking about before, or not talking about before.
There are Romans in the air.
Things are happening. There's a serious plague in both Rome itself and the surrounding country, and it's striking not just humankind, but animal kind.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, is this happening in yours as well?
It certainly is. So if you're wondering, dear listeners, well, you've never heard of the famous Aebutius gens, this might be why. It's a pestilence. Unlike Rome has ever seen, essentially. I mean, this has really given it quite a write-up.
Yeah.
It seems to have destroyed almost all livestock.
Yeah,
and
it's really bad.
It starts in livestock, the studs of mares, herds of cattle, flocks of goats and sheep. So it spreads quickly through species.
And it brings along with it bad smells. This is what Livy tells me, guys. Bad smells.
I did try to do some research into this, being like, do we know what pestilence this
as
was?
if we're ever going to know. We never know.
Well, I always try to find out,
And I commend your scholarship.
The closest I got was a history of epidemics.
Nice.
But it didn't mention this one specifically, which was a shame. But at some point it transfers to humans, and the herdsmen and husbandmen are the first to go. And then it takes everybody, essentially. It doesn't care what class of human you consider yourself to be. It doesn't care whether you're a plebeian. It doesn't care if you're a senator.
It doesn't even care if you're a consul.
Dun, dun, dun!
That's right. Both of the consuls fall ill and die.
Oh, way to get ahead. Oh,
Sorry. I couldn't resist. I am jumping ahead a little bit, but I just couldn't resist. Sorry.
We'll build up the suspense again. Like the smell, it's spoiled. I smell rotting flesh.
So sorry, I skipped ahead a bit there. But yeah, it's bad. It's all bad. Yeah.
Wait, Dionysius gives us some pretty putrid details.
Ooh, okay.
At first, the dead bodies were carried away, heaped up in carts.
Yeah.
And at last, the persons of least account were shoved into the river that flows past the city.
Oh, come on, guys. No wonder everybody got sick. You don't pollute your waterways. I say that, though, being part of humanity, which is currently polluting its waterways with, like, lots and lots of plastic unnecessarily, so I guess I should shut my trap.
Yeah, look, I mean, there are different ways to pollute your waterways,
Yeah.
and this is one of them. Dead bodies will do it.
Yeah.
They are going to float out to sea and become fish food.
Ew. But yeah, I still feel like it's bad. It's a bad idea.
So it is a bad idea.
Yeah.
And I think this tells us something about the level of desperation. So first of all, they're taking them away on heaped carts, presumably for some sort of mass burning or mass grave.
Yeah.
But it gets to the point where it seems like so many people are sick.
Yeah,
and
they can't even do that.
Yeah, they can't even do that.
Yeah.
And, you know, having a person to run a cart, nobody wants to do that because they're like, I don't want to be anywhere near these bodies. I haven't caught it yet, but I certainly don't want to get it.
It sounds very London, circa 1660.
Yeah, so I feel like it's going to end up being families who are really desperate to dispose of bodies.
Yeah.
Eventually just carrying their relatives and putting them into the river because there doesn't seem to be a better solution to this.
That is sad.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
So it begins right near the start of the consular year, and a quarter of the senators are lost.
Whoa.
So that's one way to win the battle of the orders.
Maybe this is really what's happening here. Maybe the Aequians didn't just leave. Maybe they deliberately left behind a little something.
A little gift.
A ticking time bomb. An evil plan. That's totally made up. I have no idea they did that.
On the other hand, I feel like this is the ripest time for the tribunes to strike, if ever they were, to ask for re-land allotment.
Oh, okay. Hang on a second. Whoa. Before we even get to the tribunes, I can't believe you're talking about this because I have got the Aequians and the Volscians joining forces again and the Hernicians appearing again. Do you have this?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
it's a
the
different
stuff
one.
about land allotment is just me speculating that it would be a good time for evolution.
Gotcha.
Yeah, sorry. That was an asterisk, me giving my opinion on the historical material.
Gotcha.
Not
Yeah, no, you're right. It
Dionysius.
would be. But you know what? I feel like the problem is they're all sick.
Everybody's dead.
Everybody's sick.
Everybody's rolling around being like,
Well, I mean, let's face it. If you weren't sick, you would have known people who were sick, I feel like, in this time period. And so you would have just been busy with other stuff.
It seems like fear has definitely set in. And the Aequian and Volscians start to think that this is a great opportunity.
Yeah, well, of course it is. Of course. Like, bravo, Aequians and Volscians. Like, no problems with your strategy.
It's time to overthrow this Roman supremacy.
Yeah, and basically the Romans can't help. Like, they're just like, sorry, dude, in case you haven't noticed, kind of being punished by the gods for something and we're not really sure what. And so the Hernicians really have to ally with the Latins.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, you know, like, not like they haven't fought together before, obviously, beside Rome's, but yeah, they have to be like, dude, you're gonna have to like look after yourself because we are busy.
Oh, okay. So I think we're heading in the same direction.
Yeah.
So Dionysius has the Aequians and the Volscians conclude a formal treaty with each other.
Oh, okay.
Before they were just cooperating out of mutual interest.
Yes.
And
no longer a loose alliance. It is an alliance. Huzzah.
We're officially friends. It's no longer complicated.
We've updated our Facebook status and we're really happy.
As you can see, things are going really well for us right now.
Yeah, we're just going to like rub this in the face of the Romans.
And they decide as their first endeavour as fast friends to attack the Latin territory.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And the Latin and the Hutians like, oh no! And they run towards Rome, which turns out to be a terrible idea because that's where the pestilence is.
Yeah, I mean, like, the Romans are like, look, if things turn around for us, obviously we will, you know, reconsider. But at the moment, we are sick.
Oh,
Yeah.
Look, I want to give you the full Dionysius experience here.
Give it to me.
All right.
I'm going to kick back.
So, the envoys from from the Latin people and the Venusian people come to the city and they beg the assistance of the consuls. As it happens, they arrive on the very day that Lucius Aebutius dies.
Oh, that's bad.
That is bad.
Yeah.
And Publius Servilius is at the point of death.
Okay, also bad. Yeah.
Okay, so...
You can understand why the Romans aren't in the mood to chat.
Oh, but wait.
Yeah.
Though he could barely breathe, he convened the Senate.
Guy.
Of whom the larger part were brought in half dead in litters.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's commitment to your job.
He's like, I see that our friends need help. I convene the Senate. And the senators are like, somebody hoist me onto my litter. I can't walk, and I'm nearly dead, and I smell bad.
Way to go, guys.
But I need to go to the Senate house. I need to go to the meeting. Everyone's like, you're crazy. Don't go to the meeting. I have to. I'm a senator. That's what I do.
It's not a paid position, but it's the honor. You've got to understand.
So they deliberate on the point of death, though they are.
Yeah.
And they eventually come to what is a resolution of no surprise, which is that the envoys need to talk to their countrymen, the Latins and the Venusians, that the Senate gives them permission to repulse the enemy using their own courage and forces.
Do they need permission to do that?
As the allies, they're not allowed to raise armies on their own.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And so they have to do it. They've given their grace. Please go. Raise your own armies. Yep. It's okay.
Yep.
Hopefully the consul will recover. We've got one left. And the army will be able to meet you at some later point in the conflict.
We'll catch up with you guys. Later days.
Go now.
Yeah, later days.
See you later.
Wow, this is really depressing.
So on that news, the envoys go back to the Latins and the Venusians.
Yeah, and I picture George Michael in Arrested Development, like dragging his head and his feet, sad music playing.
It's very sad.
It's very sad, yeah.
And essentially, the Latins and Venusians have been connected to the Romans for so long, it's almost like they don't know what to do anymore.
Yeah, I can understand them feeling a little lost, yeah.
So they basically just take everything that they can out of their countryside and trundle back into their cities to bunker it out.
Oh, it's so sad.
That's the Latins. The Venusians, on the other hand, they decide that they can't bear seeing their land being destroyed, and they do march out.
Right.
Eventually. And they fight really well.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go so well. And they lose a lot of their men.
Yeah.
And then they go back to their city. They're like, I can't handle it. We can't do it.
Yeah.
No more engagement, please.
Well, the Volscians and the Aequians seem to, kick it up a notch for me, because they don't just hang out in the territory of the Henici. They start to go into Roman territory itself.
Ooh.
Yeah. And this is bad because, of course, in case you haven't noticed, listeners, the Romans have been, fighting for a while now. And they their areas are already pretty desolated without having this additional burden on top of that.
So we've got this situation where, as far as Dionysius is concerned, I mean, perhaps Tusculum is part of this Roman territory at this point. So we've got this idea that the Aequian and the Volscians have gone into the Venusians' territory, but not only that, they've started to creep closer into Rome as well.
Yeah.
So Tusculum and Gabii. So Tusculum is sort of southeast.
Yes, that's where I got as well.
And Gabii is directly east.
Right, okay.
So they're getting closer and closer.
Yeah.
And once they've passed through that territory, nobody opposes them.
Right.
They then advance upon Rome.
Oh dear, things are bad. And of course, both the consuls are dead by this stage in my account. What about you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, this detail sort of creeps in just as they're getting towards the walls of the city.
Yeah. I mean, the Romans are running like super short of men here. It's looking really
pretty
bad.
grim.
Oh my god. Okay. How are they going to escape? I feel like we can't finish on this point.
We certainly can't. No.
Yeah.
And there's definitely more. So, I mean, Dionysius does talk about how the city has some natural defences to it.
Okay.
And this is something that's never been mentioned about Rome before, but it is true.
Yes.
One side is a river.
True. Yeah.
And that river, at this point in time, only has one bridge.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
This is the Pons Sublicius
Right, yeah.
And it's near the Forum Boarium, and it's made of wood, and so it can be pulled up at times of war.
Nice.
So it's the only bridge they have at this stage, and it's not stone. So, and the idea is that it's made of pile, javelins, essentially.
Right. Is that a message? Don't cross this.
No, like it's like it comes from this idea of like pointed sticks being dug into the river.
I kid.
Oh, I took you seriously. I hang my head in humiliation. No. I just got very excited about I was like, it's Latin, guys.
I'm interested that this is the way that Dionysius goes, because Livy goes a bit more existential, but I'll let you finish.
Okay, so Dionysius goes for the pragmatics.
Yeah.
And this is that although Servilius has recently died and the manpower is obviously low and everyone's quite ill,
yes,
not every part of the wall or exterior of the city needs to be defended.
Yeah.
So they can concentrate their forces. So he does mention that the circuit of the city is the same extent as that of Athens.
Right.
That's for the Greek readers amongst you.
Yeah.
That's your comparison. Although Athens is by far the biggest city at this point in time.
Sure.
In terms of land area. And it's also got hills. We know about the 7 famous hills. There are more than 7.
But there are 7 famous ones.
7 famous ones. And some of those have sheer cliffs.
Yes.
So they don't necessarily need much defense either.
That's
Fortified by nature herself.
That's true.
As it seems. And so this means that it's only on sort of the eastern edge towards the Colline Gate, which incidentally is also near the Esquiline Hill, which is incidentally also where Vestal Virgins are buried. Fun fact. Needs to be strengthened with forces at this point in time, according to Dionysius. And it's there that they have actually done more defensive work in the lead up to these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean...
Is this a legacy of Posthumius, or is in... Or you just know they have been doing similar places?
Yeah, there hasn't been any historical detail given about when this defensive work was done, but presumably it's been there for a while, because the ditch is more than 100 feet in breadth.
Whoa.
Yeah. And this is Roman feet, which is equivalent to almost anything because nobody can decide. And 30 feet deep, which sounds big, so let's say it is. And against that ditch on the defensive side, there is a wall with an earthen rampart that is quite high and broad, so that it doesn't matter how much you try to put a siege engine against it, you don't ever sort of break through. It's just a solid piece of ground as your wall. And he takes this point in time to also take a bit of a detour from his narrative.
Right.
To just make sure that the reader understands that we're in a different period of history from the period in which everybody understands siege engines to come from. So by the time that Dionysius is writing in the late 1st century BC, there's been some real innovations in how you engage in a siege with the city.
Of course, yeah.
So he talks about this really famous piece of siege machinery, the Heliopolis, the Taker of Cities, which is this multi-storied, 9-level, 200-manned piece of horror that comes at you, and at the different levels, people can fire different types of things at you.
Yeah, that sounds deadly.
It's horrific, and it's invented, according to the stories, in 306 BCE by some Greeks.
Okay.
And so this is the kind of thing that readers are expecting when you talk about a siege.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But it's not what is happening.
Yeah.
And he notes that this is anachronistic and these are not the kind of things that you should be thinking about. They're coming up to this type of defensive structure with far lesser siege devices than this.
Yeah.
And this essentially means that the Romans don't have to do too much to stop the enemy getting in, which is lucky because they're all sick.
Yeah, okay. This is quite a different interpretation to the one that Livy provides me, which, as I say, is a bit more spiritual. So basically, I love the way he paints the picture, so I am going to quote directly. In this helpless plight, without a leader and without strength, the Commonwealth was saved, basically by the gods and the city's own good fortune.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. He basically seems to be attributing it to the gods intervening, that once the Volscian Aequians are getting closer, getting too close, that they are struck with this feeling that, you know what, why are we bothering with all of this? I mean, look, it's just like desolate fields and the bodies of animals that have died and people that have died. I mean, it's a mess. This place is a mess. Why do we want it? You know what? We don't. And they're like, you know what? We should just turn around and go to somewhere that's doing well for itself and where, it's much richer. This place has clearly had it. And so they decide that they would rather go and, be in Tusculum than go ahead and, take the city of Rome, essentially. And then when all this is sort of happening, the Hernici and the Latins come to Rome's aid. And so they're like, don't worry, Rome. We know that you couldn't be there for us, but we'll be there for you. It's not just because they feel sorry for the Romans, but apparently because obviously it's also like their sense of duty. If they didn't do this, that they would somehow, not be honouring their agreement with Rome. And so they come out and they start, fighting with the enemies. And it's not like an out and out success or anything. But it's still, I think, like a bit of a morale boost, and it means that the Volscians and the Aequians have even more reason to just, bugger off and leave things alone. Because, of course, in Rome itself, the disease is still raging. And I'm sorry, I misspoke before. Servilius is actually still alive. But now he's dead. And not just him, obviously, lots of other famous people, famous senators and that sort of thing, are being killed. And so the Senate really can't do anything but ask the people to appeal to the gods, keep praying, basically. Keep praying hard is all we can think of. And so people are just crowding the temples and begging them to end the plague because things are just looking so dire.
Wow, it's like an existential crisis with a godly intervention.
Yeah, and it's basically this, that gradually Livy says, who really knows, but gradually the disease starts to run its course, people start to get healthier, and people are now thinking about, what's Rome going to be up to now? Because things have been pretty bad lately. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I go.
So there you go, listeners. You've got the spiritual, existential narrative of Livy. And you have the pragmatics of Dionysius.
Yeah, I mean, the Hernicians and the Latins, I mean, they end up sort of going off and meeting. It's kind of a bit like what we've been talking about before, the bloody Aequians. They go off to meet them in one place, can't really find them, and they end up meeting them. More in the Tusculan Valley. So,
okay. Yeah. It's an interesting situation because it seems like by all rights, Rome should fall at this point.
Right, I know. This seems honestly like almost as dire as it's ever been.
Yeah, this is pretty bad. And the way that this pestilence is described, there doesn't appear... they just have to wait it out. Nobody has enough sort of medical nouns at this point to be able to solve this. It's clearly affecting different species as well. How it's being transferred is not at all clear, but it must be through the air, presumably. It's pretty bad, and yet nothing happens.
Yeah.
And I wonder where a narrative like this comes from and what really Romans take away from something like this, a narrative about their own history where they're at the brink, but somehow they've been saved by the gods, and thus reaffirming their specialness, perhaps. But Dionysius certainly doesn't offer them that as an alternative.
No, that's the thing. I agree. It's it is the disease itself isn't going away. The gods aren't helping them with that. But yet Livy sees the gods helping them in the Volscians and the Aequians, seemingly not taking a really clear shot.
And I suppose part of this, if we're thinking pragmatically, one of the reasons why you might not want to go into Rome right now is because you don't want the pestilence.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I was thinking. I'm like, okay, so they're getting closer to the city itself, and they're seeing dead bodies and devastation, and that to me is the reason why you turn around.
Yeah.
And so I think Livy is trying to just put as positive a spin on this as possible.
Quite possibly. Because I feel like once you get to the putrid flesh of rotting carcasses that clearly nobody's been able to eat and you wouldn't want to eat because of whatever has happened.
Yeah, exactly.
You're kind of like, you know what, maybe something's up there.
I kind of feel like, they basically got close enough and then went, it's not looking as attractive right now. Maybe we'll just, we'll pencil this in.
And, I think I'll have a staycation, guys.
Yeah, exactly,
I said I'd come to Rome, but
the thing I find really interesting, and this is something we might not go into huge amounts of detail now, but once both consuls are dead, Livy seems fairly clear to me that they start using interregna again.
Oh, yeah. This is a point on which we agree. Yeah, there seems to be at least one interrex, if not two.
Definitely.
They get chosen for like a total of 5 days or something. Their job is very clear and straight and narrow. They basically have to set up an election and get it sorted.
Yeah.
And if they can't do it in that short, limited time frame, it goes to somebody else. And it's just a rotational thing until they get this sorted out, because essentially they must have consuls.
Yeah,
and they must have the magistrates.
I just find that really interesting because I don't think this has ever happened in the Republic.
I think it has a couple of times.
Okay, I was like, whoa, interregna.
What? This is a blast from the past.
Yeah, well, it seems like a really long time.
And also, why are we still calling them the interrex?
Oh, yeah. Maybe it's just the term is throwing me, but yeah, it seems weird. Like, I can't remember the time that both consuls have been, like, so incapacitated, in the sense that we've had people being out of the city, like both consuls being out of the city, but then it's like the prefect of the city or something is taking over, or something like that. So I just think it must be a sign that things are obviously like truly bad.
Things are pretty bad.
Yeah.
And it seems like things take a year-long cycle, because this is where I think the narrative gets particularly weird, because as you've mentioned, it's like the pestilence only goes for a year. Yeah. And then it's kind of done. And as soon as we have these new consuls, I mean, it's terrible. But also, narratively wise, this is why, as historians, you have lots of questions about this period in history, because everything is a bit too neat and tidy.
True.
So you have the turnaround of the year, you have some new consuls, and as soon as there's some new consuls, the pestilence seems to subside.
So you call foul on the neatness of this, because Livy gives me the impression, although he doesn't always give me names, that some of the interregna they'd had in that time were like they must have died. It just sounds like they died, while they were serving the office of the plague as it was running its course. So yeah, I feel like things were.
So the whole thing is a situation where it doesn't matter who's in charge. Flesh rabbits.
Yeah.
As long as they keep dying, they can't really progress.
Well, it kind of feels like that. Yeah. But it's finally Publius Valerius Publicola. Hello, that name sounds familiar. Who seems to organise an election of consulships who are going to have a bit more staying power.
Phew.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So maybe it's the case that this goes for far longer than a year and we don't know about it, but also that the consuls are listed as naming a year, which is weird. So how do you navigate that as well?
It's hard to say. I mean, it could very well have just lasted for a year, but just the fact that there have been several interregna that have died in office, and the only reason why they're in that office is because the two consuls have died. Yeah, I don't know. It does seem a little neat that it lasts, exactly a year. Or at least that's the impression that it's given, yeah. Well, should we pause there?
I think that's probably, yes, before we dive back into the politics, this is probably a good point to end.
Okay. Well, Dr. Chi, I hate to say it because I feel like this is going to be really bad, but it's time for the virtual pick. Thank you, Eagle.
Oh, sweet Eagle. How does he know when to arrive?
He's just well trained.
Those Romans.
All right. Well, this is going to be grim, listeners. The only thing I can say is that the next episode won't be as bad, because, how could it be?
Well, really, I mean, and if the last episode was bad, just you wait.
Yeah. Okay, so what's our first category, Dr. G?
Military clout.
Yeah, it's not good.
Nope.
Not good at all.
Not a lot going on there.
Nope, that's
nothing.
0. All
right, diplomacy.
Well, okay. I mean, I guess they do talk to their allies in a nice way. Maybe we could give them like a 1.
They do convene the Senate on their deathbeds.
Yeah, or maybe they did a bit more than that. Yeah.
I wish I could help you, but
I've cut the black lung.
But you have to help yourself.
Should we say like a 2?
Well, I feel actually I'd like to bump that score up a little bit, because I feel like actually, I mean, for all that the aristocracy, this patrician Senate is terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, they have gotten off their deathbeds
for a
meeting.
This is true.
In order to help their allies. Yeah. And I'm like, guys.
But they do have to turn them away. So
it's a real commitment to form.
Yeah. Okay. So like a 5?
Maybe a 3. I'm not giving that high.
Jesus Christ.
All that arguing for 1 extra eagle.
You know what? Let's make it a 4. Let's just make it a 4 because it's going to be bad otherwise. Okay.
Expansion.
Definitely not.
If anything.
It's going the other way. Yeah, okay, so that's nothing.
Virtus.
Okay, well, I guess the senator thing again can kind of, carrying on. Keeping calm and carrying on.
In the face of struggle, we will fight them on the beaches.
Well, and obviously, with the whole interregna thing, they're obviously trying to keep the system alive.
Yeah, but is it really dignified to throw bodies into the Tiber?
Well, no. I feel like they deserve something. Like maybe like a 1.
A 1, okay.
So we're up to like a 5.
Okay. Citizen score.
Yeah, this is bad.
That's
this is really bad
as well, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who you are, to be honest. Patricians, plebeians, who the hell cares? It's bad, bad, bad.
Guess what? You're dead.
Yeah. Okay, wow. So that gives us a total of 5 golden eagles. Oh, I feel like this is one of those points where Rome really could have just faded into nothing. But don't worry, listeners. It picks itself up. It dusts itself right off.
But we're at this great fork in the road where it's like, what could have been the Aequian and Volscian Empire of Italy?
Yeah, this is where you really see that happening. It's kind of scary.
That's the moment.
Ooh, well, I can't wait to get back to a year with, consuls that do stuff, not just fall sick.
Well, I mean, it's bound to happen.
All right, well, I feel thoroughly depressed and I'm going to have some ice cream. Can I join me, Dr. G?
I would love to.
See you later, listeners.